Okay, so I guess I've done this kind of thing before on the channel, but I wasn't really satisfied with the end result. So let's descend from the artistic and metaphorical realms for a bit, and I will recount the tale of how I got my first sports car. More or less a year has passed since I purchased my MX-5 MB. Even though I am a die-hard petrolhead, I'm more of a closet type 1. I don't really have too many petrolhead friends and peers with which I could share my interests, and those peers who are inclined to appreciate cars do so for far more practical reasons than anything else. Fuel economy, practicality, luxury features, and so on. It's kind of frustrating to be passionate about cars in such a context. Therefore, I embarked on my own personal journey towards a meaningful outcome, a fulfillment, if you will. For the first time in my life, last year, I was in the fortunate position to have some disposable income. Not an easy feat in my country. I mean, I did consider myself to be rich before, but in all those less materialistic of ways. Love life, health, job security, but never really money. Heck, it's really the reason I waited until I was 36 years old to buy a special car. Now, my requirements for such a car were pretty straightforward. A manual transmission, a coupe design, rear-wheel drive, and gasoline power plant. Now, I have set my eyes on a E82 BMW 1 Series, the coupe one, though unfortunately they're pretty rare, expensive, most of them are diesels, and the ones that I did find were basically rubbish. So within a modest budget of around 5,000 euros, there was really only one option left, the humble little MX-5. I knew Miatas were great to drive, though a little down on power, and I wasn't really gonna downgrade from my 163 horsepower Ford Focus Mark III warm hatch to a lowly 1.6 Miata, so I kind of put that thought into the back of my mind. Still, I did circle around it each couple of weeks or so, and after having a brief discussion with a local Mazda forum, I decided to go ahead and get not just a Miata, but my very own special Miata. That meant straight away an NB or NC. Don't hate me, but I'm not really a fan of the NAs, and at least the 1.8-liter engine. Well, you get it, the 1.8 in the MB or possibly the 2-liter engine in the NC, though those fetched quite the premium considering my budget. And also, since the early 1.8 NCs were sort of prone to some engine faults, I guess I was into the MB for better or worse. Little did I knew that the MB MX-5 is in reality my dream car, but we'll get to that in due time. As we pick up our story, I had started searching for a good 1.8 MX-5 MB. Some popped at around 5,000 to 6,000 euros, but none in my area. As luck would have it, I had scheduled a trip out of town and I found an MX-5 in that area. Now consider that really at the time I was sort of preparing myself to check as many cars as possible and do a thorough job at finding the closest car to my specifications. Also, being on the run, I had set up the meeting with the seller, but I was only passing through the area in a late Friday autumn evening, which is the worst time of day to be checking a car. I had this thought in my mind and I figured I will surely find a clunker. And me coming with a 26-point checklist, surely I will be able to spot a bad car. You must understand that at this point I hadn't even seen an MX-5, let alone sit in one or drive one for that matter. So I get to the car, but it was the exact opposite of what I was expecting. The bodywork was sound. The paint was a deep, gorgeous black. The interior was an exquisite, well-maintained one, if a bit rough around the edges. The top was in working order too. No big issues, lots of added goodies like MX-5 anniversary wheels, bespoke exhaust system, a style bar and other bits and nuggets. Clearly, in the grand scheme of things, those aren't hugely valuable items, even for a Miata. But seeing them seamlessly absorbed into the character of the car, I don't know, it made it less girly, it spoke to me somewhat. Well, next came the tricky part, starting it up and witnessing a marvel of an engine. Honestly, had I not known better about the Asian origin of this power plant, I would have made a predictable and boring analogy with a Swiss automatic watch. This kitty really purred. It ran great, it had an original documented mileage at just under 145,000 kilometers. It was worn enough that it wouldn't lose any value if it were properly used, but it was in an impeccable mechanical condition, just begging to be driven. There was nothing else to do, I had to leave and sleep on it. But in my mind, I knew I had found the perfect car. As soon as I left, I pulled over, phoned my wife, and told her I had found the perfect car. Naturally, she was skeptical at first, but would come around on that notion pretty soon. Fast forward a couple of days or so. I was restless and dreamy at the same time. I yearned to own that little Mazda. Coming from front-wheel drive cars and sitting for the first time in a little rear-wheel drive roadster really struck a chord with me. So I decided to call up the guy and buy the thing off him. As luck would have it, the car was more than I could hope for. The seller was also quite the gentleman. He let me check the car underneath. As he had his own ramp, he introduced me to his other race-prepped MX-5 and gave several drives in both cars. Now granted, he made some money in this deal, but the whole experience was a big win for me on all fronts, so I couldn't really fault him or the car. Even more, he brought the car on a trailer to my location about 80 miles away without any additional costs to my end. Seeing that car being unloaded from the trailer in front of my home was a dream come true. The rest, as they say, is history. It may sound generic, a happy end story with little in terms of drama or meaning, but consider what effort it takes these days to get to be really happy. This car is not just a piece of metal, a toy to satisfy my ego. It's a ticket into new experiences, making friends, seeing happy faces when I drive by, experiencing an old-school roadster feel that is soon to be out of reach for the average Joe. Seeing little boys marvel in wonder and awe while you pass them at a stoplight. That is what I got for spending 4,500 euros. And you know, even if I don't get any cent back, I will still consider myself all the richer for it.